This is Cocoon. It came out about a year and a half ago and I really liked the different visual effects in it. In the game, you carry around these orbs, each with a different ability. The cool thing about them is that they also contain a dimension within them that you can smoothly enter and exit. This is the mechanic I want to reproduce, from the orbs design to this nice portal animation, and finally the smooth transition between the worlds. This effect is interesting because it's a good mix of visual effects but also architecture design, because we need to be able to smoothly load a large level without any lag or loading screens. I quickly set up a new Unity project, imported some assets, and made the player move and carry orbs around. I also worked on the level streaming system. Here, each orb contains a different level, which is loaded and unloaded when the player is around the warp points. In this example though, the levels only contain a couple of objects and don't cause any issues when loading, but later I'd like to change the scenes to contain some asset packs to have better visuals during the transitions. While in Unity you can load the elements of a level in memory on a different thread without causing any lag in the game, the level's activation will create a lag spike if all the objects are activated at the same time with large levels. To fix that, I quickly made a system that divides the scene into chunks to activate them over a certain amount of frames. The scene loading plus the elements activation can take a small amount of time, but thankfully we have this short charging animation before transitioning. In Cocoon they definitely took it a step further and divided each dimensions into multiple scenes, both for a faster loading time but also to use less memory overall. When loading a level, I decided to offset it to align the landing pad with the orb along the camera axis. This didn't turn out to be the best decision. In Cocoon they're definitely loading the level far away to the side and using some camera stacking, with one camera rendering the current dimension, another for the destination one, and maybe an extra one for the player. That's a better setup because it allows better handling for the transition, but mostly for the lights. As you can see, when entering a world, they can have completely different shadow directions. This can easily be achieved with the camera stack technique by simply having the whole level rotated, and just using a single light source that stays still. With my setup though, I need to try to switch the light at the right moment. Moving on to visual effects and shaders, I started by doing this portal effect. I decided to bake a cube map and store it for each checkpoints in the game. This cube map is then used in the portal shader. The idea was to try to curve a flat surface to be able to sample the cube map in the correct directions by projecting the camera's view direction onto a sphere. This is the result I got. Finally, to make it look more like water, I added some extra cameras. One to render this particle system onto a render texture, which I can then use in the shader, and another camera that renders the water reflection. It's simply positioned under the floor. And by adjusting the frustum shape to match the floor, we can render only things above the water surface, and add that to our shader. I'd like to quickly point out that this is not how it's made in Cocoon. As you can see in Cocoon, the player has some kind of interaction with the elements in the reflection. The way they made their version doesn't use a baked cube map like mine, but simply instantiates the visible elements around the player. These elements are only visible by the reflection camera. Once this was all done, I moved on to the orbs design. For this I used stencil buffers, one that renders the inside of the orb and one that renders the world loaded by the orb. The stencils are switched when fading this cloud effect in. Finally, I worked on the transitions to enter and exit orbs. It wasn't easy to make it look right because I was using Mixamo animations and an imported model from the Unity asset store, but I created the animations by doing a mix of code using animation curves and some Unity animations, trying to roughly match the original animation in Cocoon. There's also some camera animation, changing the angle of the camera view, the distance to the player, as well as its FOV. I then worked on this post-processing effect, this sort of lens distortion with some dithering. I created this full screen shader that applies some lens distortion as well as some radial dithering, and I added a little bit of blur. I then animated the values during the transition. This is the final result I managed to get. It's not perfect, but I'm still pretty happy with the end result.